My name is Robert Nagle. I'm a training officer with Central York Fire Services. It's a full-time fire department that services the towns of Aurora and Newmarket. Training division is responsible for both actual hands-on training delivery, as well as program development, research, and every year when we take on new firefighters, we're responsible for their initial recruit training. Because of the nature of rural properties, a lot of times the fires don't get reported right away. So by the time the fire department arrives on scene, the barn is typically too far gone to save. Prevention is key. Certainly proper electrical wiring, proper housekeeping. Keep the hay storage in the building separate from the barn building itself. In terms of fire department access, as you can see in the background, the trucks are pretty large. It's important to have driveways that are adequate to handle large vehicles. And is there an adequate source of water nearby? Because in a rural environment, we typically have to bring our own water to the fire scene. When we talk about electrical safety with regard to a fire prevention, first of all, how old is the wiring in your barn? A lot of barns were originally built before we had electricity, so wiring has been added later. Remember that extension cords are designed for temporary use, not as permanent wiring. Is there a cover on your fuse panel or breaker panel? Do you have cover plates on all of your switches and receptacles? Wiring should be in plastic conduit for safety, because rodents like to chew on things, and they'll chew on electrical wiring as well. Rodents include, mice, rats, squirrels, all kinds of wonderful furry creatures that chew on things and cause damage. Extension cords are for temporary use only. They're not designed to be used as permanent wiring. You want to make sure it's a good quality cord, a fairly heavy gauge to be able to handle the power loads expected of it. Inspect your cords for damage. Keep in mind too that a horse, a 1,000-pound animal, if it steps on an extension cord, the cord can be damaged inside, not cut on the outside. Over time, that damaged cord can heat up and become the cause of a fire, even though there may not have been damage apparent on the surface. Cobwebs can be another significant hazard. I've seen many cases where junction boxes, switch plates, no switch plates on them, cobwebs all over the place. All it takes is a spark from the switch, the cobweb starts on fire, which then lights the shavings on fire, which in turn catches the rest of the barn on fire. It can all start with something as simple as a spark. There's also things called combustibles, such as alcohol liniments, fuel, cleaning supplies, a lot of things that you might find in your tack room that can actually cause a fire. If you store powered equipment in your barn, even something as small as a garden tractor can still present a significant fire hazard, because there is still a battery, an electrical system, an engine, and a fuel source. Heating elements can be very dangerous. Keep in mind that it takes a lot of electricity to produce that heat. So the heating element is going to draw a lot of power. If your extension cords are not of good quality, those can heat up and contribute to a fire. If the heater is too close to the object you're drying, if it's too close to bedding, it's too close to bales of hay, it can cause a fire. If the heating element gets knocked over, it can also cause a fire. It's much safer to keep the heating elements out of the barn. Many owners have a garden hose and a tap in their barn, and you may think that's an adequate water supply. It's not enough to deal with a barn fire. Swimming pools and ponds can be a good source of water for fire department use, but they have to be large enough. We need thousands of gallons to put out a typical barn fire, and they have to be accessible. We have to be able to get our equipment close enough to be able to draw water from the pond or swimming pool. The most important message I would have for you as a horse owner in terms of fire safety is, again, prevention. Prevention is key. Good housekeeping, proper electrical wiring is a very, very common cause of fires. Also, as we get into November and the cooler months of the year, use of heaters can be an issue. Hay storage, we've had a wet summer, and there's a lot of hay that got put away a little bit on the damp side. Again, I really have to stress hay storage in a separate building. You can keep a couple of days' supply in your barn in a separate enclosed room, but a large amount of hay stored in the barn is a significant fire hazard. Access for fire department vehicles is key, and if you have an adequate water supply, several thousand gallons accessible on your property, that can help in the early stages of putting out the fire.